everyone, here we are sitting in the briefing files due to comments and requests to actually have the information on camera. So we will be going through the lovely long list of the file library, catching up on our history with our four characters sitting here. So please sit tight, enjoy, get a snack, get a drink, and just listen to all of the briefing files that we have yet to get through as a bonus companion piece to the episode that's just been uploaded. So again, like purely optional, there's no gameplay here. This is just going through the file library for the briefing files. Yeah, sit back and enjoy, and let's get into it.
Still can't believe Professor Galvez was KGB.
Well, like the professor said, Moscow's hell-bent on communizing Latin America.
Yeah, the Cuban intel services are all in the KGB's pocket. You don't think he's got some kind of ulterior motive?
If the CIA is up to something, it's only natural that the KGB wants to know about it. But I doubt they're showing us their full hand.
We'd better watch our backs.
Wonderful.
What do you think, Kaz? Why did Paz come all the way to Colombia herself?
It's a long trip to make just to be Exhibit A in Galvez's sales pitch. She's only 16, still a kid. Maybe we should take her wish for peace at face value.
It's true.
Costa Rica isn't alone. All of Latin America is getting swept up in the superpowers' Cold War. The whole ideological split between East and West. In the end, it's just a greedy scramble for wealth by the ruling classes. The Western bourgeois stand to lose everything if their countries go communist. After all, the communists want to abolish private property altogether. So the capitalist rulers desperately tried to halt the global spread of communism. Hence the phenomenon of red baiting. And the communists, for their part, didn't exactly stay true to their principles. They tried to escape class-based society, but between Stalin's autocracy and the rise of the nomenclatura, they ended up creating one anyway. Once people have power, they stop caring about equality. That's where communism, where society in general reaches its limits. The rulers only care about their own gain. The opposing side becomes a risk factor that threatens the profit, and thus the ongoing struggle between capitalism and communism was born.
And now, nuclear deterrence is part of the picture.
Exactly.
I mean, he ain't wrong, is he? Really?
They say nuclear weapons are the reason we haven't seen conflict on a global scale since World War II. The thought that your opponent might launch nukes against you sort of makes it tough to start an armed conflict, especially now that they've got intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nowhere is safe.
Of course, all that has caused military expenditures to skyrocket.
Well, the only way to ward off a preemptive strike is to flaunt your own nuclear stockpile, and that's caused their numbers to increase exponentially, not just with regards to destructive power, but in terms of targeting technology too. Now they can hit a target halfway across the world with pinpoint accuracy. In a way, the space race was a demonstration of that technological progress.
And as a result of all that, we now have mutually assured destruction.
It's the ultimate form of deterrence. No one's going to launch their nukes knowing they'll be obliterated in return.
I don't know. The chance of somebody hitting the button by mistake is never zero.
And then that's how Fallout happens, baby.
You're right. Even with peace guaranteed by MAD, there's always the risk of an accident.
Nobody wants the world to end on account of some machines malfunctioning.
On the other hand, thanks to deterrence, we haven't had a world war since 1945. You gotta admit, it has been pretty peaceful.
Not that it matters to us.
People point at the nuclear arms and space races and call it a Cold War. I say if they're not shooting at each other, why not call it world peace?
Doesn't mean war is gone. Look at Korea. Look at Vietnam.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking in relative terms here. Besides, if war died out completely, we'd be SOL.
We're not warmongers.
And yet, we can't survive in a world that's at peace.
You got a point.
The paradox of what they're trying to do, fighting for peace, but literally existing because of war. So, it's interesting.
So it's been more than 10 years since the Cuban Missile Crisis, huh?
I don't think we'll ever forget it.
No kidding. Those 13 days starting October 15th, 1962, were probably the closest we ever came to all-out nuclear war. The Russians deployed nuclear missiles to Cuba. America responded with a naval blockade. Then Russia shot down an American spy plane. I was still a teenager back then, but I remember what it felt like to be one step away from nuclear war. The adults were freaking out.
If it wasn't for the Cuban Missile Crisis, there might never have been an Operation Snake Eater. And
What's the matter, Snake? It's not like you to get all hypothetical.
I guess not. It was the reassessment after the missile crisis that paved the way for the hotline between Moscow and Washington, and also for détente. That's irony for you.
Yeah.
The Treaty of Tlatelolco was enacted to make Latin America into a nuclear-free zone. It bans the testing, use, manufacture, production, acquisition, storage, and deployment of nuclear weapons. The impetus was pretty obvious. The series of crises triggered by the deployment of nukes in Cuba.
Not hard to imagine. Those 13 days had the whole world frozen in fear.
Of course, the country that started it all, Cuba, hasn't actually ratified it yet.
Still, the treaty's backed by over 20 countries. Anyone flouting it risks becoming an international pariah.
True. Opinol would investigate, no doubt. I heard they used Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles as their model when they drew up the treaty. I think the Treaty of Tlatelolco might have been their way of asking nuclear powers not to use nukes against them. That's the biggest difference between the treaty and the 3 principles. I guess you could call it a 4th principle.
It's interesting how listening to these as well, like in the Cold War, these kind of like, they're not all necessarily separate, because this one continues on from that one, and others do the same thing. It's interesting.
So Costa Rica abolished its army back in, 1949? Pretty gutsy move for a Central American nation at the time.
Yeah, well, they'd just come out of a civil war. I'm sure they were driven by a desire to avoid another tragedy, like Paz said. But I think they had a more compelling reason. Army coup d'etat are a way of life in so many Latin American countries. Imagine seeing that up close.
No army, no coup. Makes sense.
Plus, their economy was in ruins, so they honestly didn't have any money to spend on an army anyway.
Yeah, but weren't they on less than friendly terms with Nicaragua?
Yeah, and in fact, Nicaragua did end up invading. But the Civil Guard fought back and the OAS brokered a ceasefire. The US and the rest of the OAS had their back, and they used it to full advantage. For a quarter century, they survived in the powder keg of Central America. That must have taken some serious diplomacy, even if the Civil Guard is pretty decked out for a police force.
Must be tough to be a country without an army.
I love how much of a, like, sort of like a focus there is on, like, the history of stuff, and it's like, the people who are doing the voice acting for this literally just, like, are in, like, their own history lesson. Kojima's history lessons, you know? And he, like, the amount of dialogue in just Metal Gear games in general, but the amount of dialogue that's just talking about this stuff is super impressive.
Hey, Snake, mind if I ask you something?
Since when did you start asking permission?
So, you used to be part of a CIA paramilitary unit, right?
That's right.
Ever do any ops in Central America?
No, not personally. But there were other units who did all kinds of stuff.
I remember the Bay of Pigs invasion back in '61. The papers had a field day with it.
Operation Zapata. That was the CIA code name. The whole thing went south.
Then there was Che Guevara, being hunted down in Bolivia. I heard the CIA had a hand in that, too.
There were several units similar to mine. MSP, SOG. They'd recruit former special forces, train them as intelligence agents, and send them on deniable covert paramilitary operations. One of those units trained the Bolivian army in counter-guerrilla tactics.
And then had them shoot El Che.
So the story goes.
Okay. How to pronounce Sia? La Sia?
Around here they say La CIA instead of CIA, huh?
Nothing strange about it. That's how it's pronounced when you read it in Spanish.
It has the feminine noun ending a, so they use the article la. Apparently some people have taken to using the term UCLA.
That's a new one to me. What's it mean?
It stands for Unilaterally Controlled Latino Assets.
Meaning they're local agents?
Yeah, that's the idea. Washington uses them like pawns. Nobody knows who they really are or what they're doing.
Interesting.
So I hear Amanda mistook you for Che Guevara, Snake. That's not too bad, huh?
Yeah, right. I'm not even worthy of polishing his boots.
Don't be so modest. From where I'm standing, your men see you as a great man.
As great as the century's most complete human being.
That's Sartre, right? Well, there's hardly been a more iconic figure of his times than Che.
Oh, he was more than that. He was a true revolutionary and a great warrior.
I'm with you there. Can you believe that when he first went to Cuba with Fidel, they had only 12 guys with them?
But they rallied. They brought in new recruits, won the support of the peasants, expanded their organization.
And in the end, they overthrew the Batista regime.
People flocked to them because they were honest. They won because they were strong. Those are the qualities that make men great.
You know, we're kind of in the same boat they were back then. Here we are, a handful of mercenaries taking on an army backed by the United States.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go.
But we've got to keep on going. It's not just about winning in battle. You need to think about recruiting people and growing this operation.
Got it.
Got it.
Boss, did you ever read Che Guevara's book, Guerrilla Warfare?
I can't remember if I got to that one or not.
You should have. That's why I lent it to you. A lot of the guerrilla tactics it covers apply to sneaking missions, too. Che was one of the first people to articulate the theory of guerrilla warfare. C.E. Lawrence of Arabia, was another one. And Mao Zedong and his On Protracted War. Theory aside, Nicaragua's General Sandino was one of the first to put guerrilla tactics into practice, which explains why the Sandinistas named themselves after him.
If you think about it, guerrilla warfare itself has been around since ancient times. There's only so many ways a small group can upset a large army.
There was a samurai in Japan who excelled in guerrilla warfare.
No kidding.
Tsunoki Masashige. He was a warrior who lived in the medieval era. He used unconventional tactics to help overthrow the Kamakura shogunate.
Like what?
Trojan horse-style maneuvers and decoys to confuse the enemy. The best one was when the enemy was climbing the castle walls. He dumped boiling water and human excrement on them.
Sounds great. Let's put it in the MSF playbook.
Sounds great.
You're not serious, are you, boss?
Why not? We've got plenty of crap to unload.
Yeah. I'll think about it.
This is gonna be a lovely information overload, I can already tell.
The year the Cuban Revolution was won, Che visited Japan as a member of an economic delegation. While he was there, he visited Hiroshima.
Hiroshima.
Since he was there to discuss economic issues, Hiroshima wasn't part of the original itinerary. Some said the Ministry of Foreign Affairs didn't want to let him go, but he went anyway. He snuck out of his hotel and took an overnight train.
Traveling guerrilla style. Sounds like Che, all right.
He visited the Peace Memorial Museum and the Atomic Bomb Survivors Hospital. Apparently it gave him quite a shock. As a doctor, it must have been painful for him to see how the victims suffered.
Nukes destroy everything.
He was quoted as saying, "They put you through this, and still you do whatever America says." Those words really hit me hard, especially when I think of my mom. He said something else, too. Let us all love Hiroshima and its people.
I can believe it. Che never managed to numb himself to other people's pain. That's why people loved him. And why he died.
That bandana you're always wearing, that thing's a real antique. Ever think about getting a new one?
This one's fine.
Come on, we can't have our boss wearing a raggedy old thing like that.
It was a gift, okay? It wouldn't be right to get rid of it.
It was. Okay then. Speaking of which, Che supposedly had a black scarf he used to take everywhere with him.
A scarf?
One of his comrades gave it to him when he broke his arm in battle. Che used that silk scarf as a sling, and the comrade who gave it to him became his second wife.
Alida, right?
Even after his arm healed up, he never went anywhere without that scarf. What about you? You get that bandana from someone special?
No, nothing like that. It's important to me. That's all.
Certainly wasn't stolen from the boss or anything when falling from a bridge. Never.
You were saying Japan has a peace constitution too.
Yep. Japan renounced war in Article 9 of its constitution, aspiring sincerely to an international peace based on justice and order. The Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation, and the threat or use of force as a means of settling international disputes. In order to accomplish the aim of the preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. The right of belligerency of the state will not be recognized.
You know it by heart.
Some things you never forget.
Impressive. There were some parts I didn't quite get, though. Like the whole means of settling conflicts thing.
Yeah, that's been the subject of debate. Whether or not it forbids any and all use of force. The current Constitution was originally drawn up under the Allied occupation. The first draft was even submitted by Allied GHQ. So naturally, there are some who feel the Constitution was imposed on Japan by foreigners.
Things like that are never simple. Same for every country, I guess.
One thing's for sure, though. Not having an army let Japan focus on economic recovery after the war. In that sense, it's the same as Costa Rica.
Kaz, you were in the Japanese Self-Defense Force, right? I thought that Article 9 you were talking about earlier prevented Japan from having an army.
Yeah, and that's another subject of controversy. The Self-Defense Force is an organization for the purpose of defense. Article 9 of the Constitution does not deny Japan's right to self-defense. Therefore, the SDF is constitutional. That's Tokyo's official stance.
Sounds complicated.
Call it what you will. It's a distinctly Japanese way of interpreting things.
True.
The U.S. has military forces stationed in Japan, right?
Right. Even though the Allied occupation ended, American forces are still stationed there under the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty.
Unlike Costa Rica.
Part of it stems from the occupation, but Japan also occupies a key strategic position from America's perspective. It's next door to the Soviet Union, and close to China and North Korea as well. It's integral to the security of Pacific Asia. For America, Japan represents a barrier against communism.
What about for Japan?
As you might expect, there's deep-rooted opposition to the alliance. In 1960 and 1970, when the treaty was up for revision, there were mass protest movements against it, especially in Okinawa. The U.S. only gave it back to Japan 2 years ago, and American bases are still concentrated there. It's a heavy burden for the Okinawans to bear.
Then why don't they scrap the treaty?
Lots of reasons. There's the imbalance of power with the U.S., of course, and if Japan pulled out, they'd be losing the nuclear umbrella America provides. And as for whether the JSDF could defend the country after the Americans left, I really couldn't say. Costa Rica is in a similar situation. They depend on the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, the so-called Rio Pact.
So, the countries with peace constitutions end up having to rely on other countries' armies. Kind of ironic.
On the flip side, not everybody in America is satisfied with it either. Some people argue Japan is freeloading off America's security guarantee. And you know how Japan's industrial exports are making inroads in the States.
Yeah, I've got a Japanese camera myself. Best damn camera around.
Japan's low defense spending allows it to invest more in economic recovery and expand its share of the American market. That's a bitter pill for Americans to swallow.
Interesting.
You know that today, Japan is under the American nuclear umbrella.
Right.
The U.S. vowed to retaliate against any country that launches a nuclear strike against an allied country. That promise deters nuclear attacks against America's allies, hence the term nuclear umbrella. But suppose the Russians nuke Tokyo. Would America really nuke Moscow in return? If they did, the Soviet Union would undoubtedly retaliate. Would Washington really be willing to risk having a bomb dropped on itself in order to avenge Japan? I'm not so sure.
Don't tell me you're still worried about Japan. After all these years?
It's not that.
To be honest, I'm not convinced either. But Moscow faces the same dilemma. Maybe Washington wouldn't retaliate on Japan's behalf. Then again, maybe it would.
So you're saying Moscow wouldn't want to risk being attacked either?
The whole concept of nuclear deterrence is entirely hypothetical to begin with. When you get down to it, it's all smoke and mirrors.
I like these conversations that they're having, though, with their two perspectives, which is pretty good.
Japan shall not possess, manufacture, or allow the introduction of nuclear weapons into Japan. Those are the 3 non-nuclear principles set forth by the Japanese government.
Allow the introduction? That's funny. Some of the U.S. warships that visit Japanese ports are armed with nukes. Or are you going to tell me they transfer them at sea onto other ships every time they visit?
You raise a good point, Snake. But the Japanese government doesn't recognize it as such. The introduction of nuclear weapons into Japanese territory would need to be agreed upon in advance. America hasn't made any such agreements. Therefore, they aren't bringing nukes into Japan. That's the official excuse.
Doesn't sound like much of an excuse to me.
I don't blame you. Keep in mind, though, Japan suffered actual nuclear attacks. Anti-nuke sentiment there runs deeper than you think. I suppose the government's not really in a position to admit that sort of thing.
Interesting. Alright. The JSDF.
So tell me, Kaz, how's the self-defense force you were in different from an army?
The JSDF is set up for national defense. It's not configured for aggression against other countries. It's what you'd call exclusive defense.
Exclusive defense?
It's the fundamental strategic posture of the JSDF. No preemptive attacks. Only the minimum defensive action necessary after an enemy attacks.
Anything defined as self-defense, then?
The JSDF originated as the National Police Reserve. Back then, American forces stationed in Japan were being sent over to fight in the Korean War. So in a sense, the NPR was filling a gap.
Police, huh? Reminds me of the Costa Rican Civil Guard.
Yeah, exactly. They're also dispatched to provide disaster relief. The year before I joined, they had a hell of a time trying to rescue some buses that got hit by landslides.
Okay. Why Miller quit the JSDF?
So why'd you quit the JSDF?
Because I didn't have a reason to be in Japan anymore.
A reason?
My mom had died 3 years earlier, so I didn't have to care for her anymore. With her gone, there was no point hanging around in Japan.
Yeah, but a man with your talents could have risen pretty high in the ranks, I imagine.
I don't know what they made of me. Could be it actually alienated me from the brass. And personally, I could never get used to the idea of exclusive defense.
Meaning?
On a strategic level, I can see how a country could go with the exclusive defense model used by the JSDF, and I've got nothing against my fellow soldiers who believe in it. On a tactical level, though, it just rubbed me the wrong way. To put it simply, I was itching for a real fight.
I figured.
And I felt as long as I was in the JSDF, I'd never be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with my father, who was in the U.S. Army. Seeing Yukio Mishima's suicide didn't help either.
Yukio Mishima, the guy who wrote The Temple of the Golden Pavilion.
The way he questioned the status quo hit home with me. Not that I admired his vision or anything, but it did get me thinking, that's for sure.
Cool. Once we get through this full file library and go through everyone's, by the way, is like... It'll be so much easier from there, because then the information we get will be much shorter. I'm going through a lot of stuff that's like backed up at the moment. But I'll soon we'll get through this stuff. Let's listen to the stuff about Miller.
Don't forget to give the MSF staff assignments. Where you place people will determine how Mother Base grows.
Right.
That goes for me too. Assign me wherever you think is best.
You? I thought you were second in command.
Don't worry, I've got that covered. But MSF is still small, and I don't have the leisure of sitting around on my butt all day.
I see your point, but...
Not to brag or anything, but I kick ass at whatever job you gave me. Put me in the area you want to focus on developing most. I'll take real good care of the staff there.
Easy, cuz.
I believe it hasn't saved, but I'm pretty sure in the last episode I listened to these ones, but they're still showing as exclamation marks, so it might not have saved correctly. We'll see. We'll just listen to them again anyway.
Life's funny sometimes, isn't it?
What brought that on?
We first met as enemies on the battlefield.
No, I've definitely watched this one. I've definitely listened to this one. Because I remember actually pointing out the fact that the conversation was so interesting, and how it was like worded that it's like not a natural conversation. So there you go. We have definitely listened to that one.
You probably heard this a million times, Snake, but you should always avoid combat with the enemy when possible.
Right.
We're outnumbered and in unfamiliar territory. We won't survive long in a straight fight, even with you on our side.
I know. Avoiding combat is rule number 1 in a sneaking mission.
That's right. Don't let the enemy know where you are, and attack only when necessary, using hit-and-run tactics to cripple them. It's the essence of guerrilla warfare. Don't carry any more gear than you need. If you try and stuff your entire arsenal into your backpack, it'll be too heavy and your mobility will be impaired. You'll only be hurting yourself.
I know. Take only what you need. Every rookie knows that.
You can check the weight of your gear before heading out, so make sure you do.
Got it.
I love it when there's like they acknowledging like the tutorial information for the boss, and he's like, I know. Like, come on, man.
Even a born warrior like you gets hand tremor, Snake. It happens even when you're full of stamina, and it only gets worse when you're tired, especially with larger, heavier weapons. Obviously, you'll get better aim crouching than you will standing, and when you use a scope, setting your sights on a single point will gradually give you a more precise aim. As we develop better weapons at Mother Base, though, you may gain access to new, low-tremor versions of the same guns. So if you expect the shakes to be a problem, you might want to put some resources into R&D.
I'll keep it in mind. Then again, the more you use a weapon, the more your hands get used to it. Sometimes it pays to be faithful to your gun.
Cool, so you can have guns that reduce the tremor.
Choosing the right uniform is crucial. Pick one that matches the mission objective and your own combat style.
Cool, good stuff. And then he's going to go into stuff like jungle fatigues and being naked.
Jungle fatigues are made for jungle combat. They provide decent protection and let you carry a fair number of weapons. Your standard uniform, basically. The distinguishing factor is that your camo index will vary a lot, depending on the area. Wear a pattern that makes you blend in with your surroundings, and your camo index goes up. Wear something that clashes, and you'll stick out like a sore thumb.
Pick the right pattern for the occasion. Sigint used to lecture me on it all the time.
Sigint reference. Name drop, baby.
Naked. That's exactly what you are with this uniform. The pants are the same as the jungle fatigues. Obviously, since you're exposing your bare skin, your defense and camo index are gonna be low. On the plus side, it's so light you can move around quicker.
Good for her. Showing off muscles, too.
Hey, Snake, I heard they gave you your old code name because you used to run around with your shirt off. Is that true?
Don't believe everything you hear. They called me naked because I went in without gear or food. I had to procure everything on site.
You mean they sent you into the jungle without even a pair of pants? On a halo jump from 35,000 feet? Sweet Jesus, you are a legend.
You're busting my balls, aren't you, cuz?
Little bit, yeah.
Hilarious.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm not going to do the co-op stuff because that is not relevant. But we'll listen to these here.
Snake, about cardboard boxes. It feels kind of weird me explaining this stuff to you, but there have been a few recent developments in cardboard box technology. So just to be safe, here goes.
Go on.
You can do much
He's
more
so
with the box than
interested.
just hide under it. You can put it someplace and leave it there.
Huh?
You can get on top of it and use it to reach high places, or hide from the enemy in its shadow.
I
Oh.
like what I'm hearing so far.
And that's not all. You can even put items in it and send them to Co-op's teammates.
Really? I never thought of any of that. Damn. Is there anything a cardboard box can't do? Every soldier should have one.
Yeah, well, don't get too excited. This isn't exactly what they were made for.
Which reminds me, don't you think the boxes around here are a little on the big side?
You're right. I bet 2 people could fit under one box, if they packed in tight enough. They call them love boxes.
Love boxes?
Of course, you don't need a love box to fit 2 people inside. Any box of similar size will do.
2 men in a box.
Up to 2 people can fit inside a cardboard box.
Tell me how.
Move close to a box with a teammate inside, and an icon will appear. Then press the action button. You'll stay inside as long as the action button is pressed.
So, same as snake formation, huh?
Exactly the same. In fact, when you put on a cardboard box when snake in, both of you can climb inside.
Ah, a box big enough to hold me and my buddy. These are fine times we live in, hey, Kaz?
Yeah. Sure, boss.
Big Boss's passion for being in a cardboard box is just so fucking funny to me. I love that so much. So I guess they're in the co-ops thing. There's like a snake formation thing, which is relevant to also being in cardboard boxes with a teammate.
Snake, about that cassette player Galvez was carrying.
What about it?
That was no Russian imitation. It was the real deal. A prototype developed by a Japanese company.
There you go.
Get out of here.
It's
Sony.
true. It had the Sony logo on it. The product name is Walkman.
Walkman.
It's a revolutionary new concept. Music you can listen to on the go. You can take it with you when you leave the house. I gave it a listen, and you wouldn't believe how good the sound quality is for something so tiny. And in stereo, too. Think of the technology that must have gone into it. And that tape is equally amazing. The treble range is clearly superior to any other cassette ever made. Stylish, too.
How'd Galvez get his hands on a model that's not even out yet?
Beats me. It's not the kind of thing I'd expect some stodgy Soviet to be into.
Me neither. Tell you what, though, it's a fine piece of work. It'll let me listen to my music when I want, where I want.
I never thought I'd hear you say that, but I have to agree. Me? I'm a recording freak, and I always used to laugh at the idea of a portable player. But now that I've seen it in action, I've changed my mind. Being able to take your music with you, this could be the start of a revolution in music.
Could be.
I'm having the guys at Mother Base study and analyze it. Who knows? They might be able to come up with something even better.
Like an iPod or something. Wouldn't that be insane? I'm thinking about calling it the iPod.
Amanda and her crew tell me they've managed to identify several different categories of mercenaries employed by the CIA.
Give me a rundown. Sounds like info I could use.
No problem. I'll go through them in order. The type of enemy you'll be seeing most is the type that patrols and guards a specific operational area. For the sake of convenience, Amanda's crew calls the outdoor ones patrolmen and the indoor ones guards. They might look like they're just out for a stroll, but don't be fooled. They're sharper than they look. All of their senses are finely honed. Normally, they'll patrol along fixed routes, but when the alert level is raised, they'll assume a more efficient alert posture and focus on defending specific points. That's bad for you. Obviously, they can hold their own in combat, and with body armor, it'll be even harder to take them down. If they're wearing a bulletproof helmet, you can forget about one-shot kills. Just a heads up. You'll need to be smart about using camo and pick your routes. The most important thing is to avoid detection. When the enemy spots you and goes on alert, they may call in a backup strike team. These assault teams are heavily armed, well-trained, and highly dangerous. Amanda's crew calls them commandos. Unlike the patrolmen, these guys will actively, relentlessly track and hunt you down like hounds.
Hounds to hunt a former foxhound. Bring it on.
They won't give up easily even if they lose sight of you. They'll clear out any likely hiding places they come across. So don't get too comfy in one spot, or you might get caught again. Keep your eyes fixed on them and what they're doing. Also, be aware that commando gear includes body armor, so don't think you can deal with them by going in guns blazing.
All I've got to do is find an exposed weak point, and...
Exactly.
Okay.
There are areas out there where enemy soldiers are deployed in multiple layers for extra coverage. More than a few of those will be attacking you from a distance, rooftops and far-off vantage points. Try not to get too distracted by nearby enemies, because you could be leaving yourself wide open to longer-range attacks.
I'll be careful.
Enemy tanks, armored vehicles, and attack choppers are always accompanied by a combat squad.
We listened to this one last episode when we were taking on the vehicle.
We know there are variations in the kinds of gear patrolmen and commandos wear, especially the body armor. Our scouts report that an enemy's defense and firing accuracy are directly proportional to how heavy their gear is.
Those must be the guys with the highest combat skills. They can fight in heavier gear without their performance suffering.
Supposedly, it's pretty easy to tell the difference in gear just by looking. So remember, use extra caution when dealing with enemies wearing heavy gear.
Wonderful.
Enemies will try to fight you from different distances, based on the weapon they've got equipped. When you meet an enemy, get a good look at what they're carrying. It can make or break your chances in battle. Enemies carrying handguns and shotguns will try and get in close. That makes them dangerous, but at the same time, easier to hit. Keep your wits about you, and you can turn a threat into an opportunity. Enemies carrying assault rifles and machine guns will usually fire at you from farther away. Use whatever cover you can find, then return fire with a few well-placed shots of your own. Don't expect enemies carrying sniper rifles or rocket launchers to get up close and personal. They'll be constantly moving from place to place looking for an opening to snipe at you. Tricky bastards. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Go with the sniper rifle. Make sure you stay out of their line of sight, and when they expose themselves, take them down.
Okay. That's the stuff for Miller. Pause. Let's get into Costa Rica.
Costa Rica means rich coast in Spanish.
Is it true that Columbus was the one who came up with the name?
Your guess is as good as mine. But it is true that Columbus landed his ships near Limon back in the age of exploration. He wrote in his diary that when he landed, the indigenous showered him with gifts of gold, hence the name. It sounds a little strange to me. There's no way they could find that much gold in Costa Rica.
Columbus originally set sail in search of the legendary land of gold. Maybe he was just nuts about this stuff.
Costa Rica is rich enough without it. Look at the forests and the animals and the peace-loving people. That is what I want to protect.
I know how you feel.
Democracy took root in Costa Rica before anywhere else in Central America. Sure, we had coup and dictators and all, but never a total meltdown. That is, until 26 years ago.
The Civil War. Yeah. I understand you lost your grandparents.
It started with a dispute over alleged fraud in the presidential election. What I do not understand is why friend turned against friend, when they could have talked it out instead.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Even today, some buildings still have bullet holes from the Civil War. A quarter century later, and it is a tragedy we Ticos cannot forget, must not forget. It was the year after the Civil War that the army was constitutionally abolished. A new president was elected this year, President Otaber. He seems to be distancing himself from the United States. He has limited the privileges granted to American banks, lifted the sanctions on Cuba. Our last president was so pro-US, people suspected he was in bed with the CIA.
You think the CIA is doing this because it feels threatened by the president's shift in policy?
It is possible, but would they really bring in such a huge army just because of that?
Part of our job is finding out.
Exactly. Thanks, Snake. Peace.
Peace.
So, are you a student at the University for Peace, Paz?
No, I am still in high school. But Professor Galvez lets me visit his office and study with him every now and then. International law, security, conflict resolution, human rights. We study all these subjects and then use them to build the foundations of peace.
Yeah, I get it. I just never heard the UN had a University for Peace before.
Oh, that. Well, to be precise, it is still being set up. They have started conducting research, but the UN has not passed the necessary resolution yet. Professor Galvez couldn't wait that long.
Oh, right.
Costa Rica abolished its army and has also hosted the Central American Court of Justice. It is the perfect place to build a university like ours. Don't you think?
That coffee you guys brought us is pretty damn good.
Isn't it? Costa Rican coffee is the best. The Central Basin has all the right conditions for growing coffee. It is high in elevation, with steady temperatures and well-drained volcanic soils.
The professor certainly seems attached to it.
The coffee we drank on the boat coming over was awful. It put him in such a terrible mood.
Well, how come I never hear about Costa Rican coffee then?
Because it gets bought up by wholesalers and mixed with beans from other countries. It is really a shame. Such wonderful beans, and nobody knows they are from Costa Rica.
Huh. They should launch an ad campaign or something.
Right. I hope one day people will recognize Costa Rican coffee for what it is.
I'm with you there.
So sad about the beans.
Paz, you said Costa Rica has no army, right?
Correct. Article 12 of the Constitution declared that the Army as a permanent institution is abolished. It does permit us to organize armed forces for national defense based on inter-American treaties.
Only temporarily, then.
In effect, yes. But in the years since the Constitution took effect, Costa Rica has not once raised an army.
Paz, how does your country defend itself without an army? Especially in a rough neighborhood like Central America.
With the right kind of diplomacy. If we live up to our ideals and earn the respect of other countries, the international community will support us. The 2 times Nicaragua actually did invade, the conflict was resolved diplomatically under OAS auspices.
Doesn't that leave you depending on the U.S. after all?
American influence is unmatched, it is true. San Jose was critical of American policy at the time, but America supported us all the same. It was because we practiced peaceful diplomacy. That is what I like to think.
That's one way to approach it, sure. But there are countries out there who will use force no matter how bad it looks.
Maybe so. I know my way of thinking probably looks naive to you, but it is not like we expect peace without working for it. Diplomacy is a battle in itself, and we have to make the effort to seek out causes of misfortune and nip them in the bud. It was that kind of thinking that got me trapped in their base.
I'm not blaming you. You haven't done anything wrong.
The army was abolished 25 years ago, the year after the Civil War. I learned about the sorrow of civil war from a very young age, the futility of countrymen fighting each other, and the tragedy. Costa Rica learned the hard way. That is why it abolished its army. It decided to pour its efforts into education instead. More teachers than soldiers was the slogan.
Education is essential, no question. Even Che used to teach reading and writing in between guerrilla campaigns.
Costa Rica was poor at the time. We did not have many resources. I suppose we had to pick one or the other. The military or the schools.
Kaz was telling me Japan has a peace constitution, too.
That is right. Apparently, when Costa Rica was drafting its constitution, they looked to the Japanese as a model. Only, Japan's constitution renounces war itself.
Unlike Costa Rica.
But Japan has a self-defense force, right? That I do not get. I think I will ask Mr. Miller about it next time I see him. He said he used to be in the JSDF.
Huh. You're a curious one, are you? Don't study too hard.
I feel like I'm studying at the moment. I'm studying by getting all of this information. What's really interesting about this is it's like in the past Metal Gear Solid games, I've never listened to, it's because it's almost impossible, especially on just like one playthrough or your first playthrough, to listen to every codec call, and I've listened to more as we've gone on in the games. The first games I listened to it less, but like this, because in a sense this replaces the codec. This is like any recorded dialogue and all conversations that you can have, I can now choose to have them, which is a good feature. But it's like it literally everything on offer is ready to and available to be listened to, in comparison to in the past games where it's like contextualized, and if you pull up the codec in the right time to get the relevant information, sort of thing. So sitting through it and getting it all in one go is much different to being actually in the gameplay, in the setting itself, you know?
What was that you were saying? Peace is not the natural state of men. You said you learned it in school.
That is right. They are the words of the German philosopher Immanuel Kant. In 1795, he wrote a book titled Perpetual Peace. Kant argued that it is precisely because peace is unnatural that we have to make it ourselves.
How?
That is what his book is about. Is the concept starting to sound interesting now?
Not really. I belong in a more natural world.
Is that so? My grandparents died in the Civil War. If only we had been at peace, they would not have lost their lives. You actually wish for war?
It's not like I want to hurt innocent civilians, but if someone attacks you, what are you supposed to do? A country needs the strength to defend itself. Otherwise it faces invasion, oppression, political subjugation.
If they would simply stop using force to tangle with each other, countries would not need force to defend themselves.
And how would you guarantee that?
I...
Sorry, but you have to understand how the world works in order to protect the ones you love. That's not to say ideals aren't important too. They are.
You are right, Snake. Thanks. Peace. Costa Rica's forests are more diverse than you might expect. Not all of them are tropical rainforests. Costa Rica is close to the equator, it is true, but it is also very mountainous.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Go up 4,000 feet in elevation and the temperature drops more than 7 degrees.
There are basically 3 types of forests. The lowlands are covered in tropical rainforests, the highlands by tropical cloud forests, and areas where there's a dry season have tropical dry forests.
And now we get even more information about the forests. Subcategories.
The lowlands along the Caribbean coast are mostly covered by hot, humid tropical rainforests, what most people envision when they think of jungle. The closely packed trees spread their branches out at great heights to soak up the sun. Their shade makes it dark near the ground, so be careful. Of course, with so little light, few plants can grow on the ground, so it might actually be easier to walk.
So even if you could photosynthesize, it wouldn't do you any good.
Photosynthesize? People cannot do that.
Most people, anyway.
Yep.
Areas with a distinct dry season, like the Pacific coast, have tropical dry forests. During the dry season, the trees drop their leaves. It gives you a clearer view, but at the same time, there are fewer places to hide. So be careful.
Sounds dull.
It is not really. A lot of trees flower during the dry season, including my favorite, the tabebuya. It has these amazingly vivid yellow flowers. Costa Rica is said to have about 87,000 species of living things. That is about 5% of all the known species in the world.
A tiny place like this? Huh. I'll be damned.
I want to protect that biological diversity. When diversity is lost, the environment weakens. Just look at the plantations.
I think I know what you mean. It's like trying to assemble a unit from similar guys. It usually doesn't work out. Throw a few square pegs in there and everything falls into place.
There are so many species here that a lot of them have not even been classified yet. I am hoping I can help do that someday. Kind of like a parataxonomist.
Say that again?
Parataxonomist. Someone who helps a taxonomist.
Oh. Huh. I thought you were going to say it had something to do with parachutes.
You're weird.
Good one, Snake.
The Development Corporation of Costa Rica, or CODESA, was established 2 years ago. Since President Oduber was elected this year, the state has been putting a lot more effort into development.
The corporate state, so to speak.
Growth is good and all, but there is one thing that bugs me.
What's that?
I cannot help but wonder whether CODESA is not just a front for the CIA.
You mean what the professor was saying about the CIA mercenaries posing as security guards? They were using CODESA as camouflage?
I am worried that development is going to destroy the forests, but I do not suppose it has anything to do with this.
Interesting. About herself. Did we not? Because the exclamation
My mother
marks are
was
still
the one
here.
who named me Paz. She said it was an expression of her wish that the country stay at peace. It is a pretty common name in Central America. My mother always used to tell me, never make war. Always help keep the peace.
I remember. Your grandparents.
Yes. They died in the Civil War. I think that is why my mother hated war so much.
That's another thing you've got in common with Kaz.
Yeah, we've listened to
His mother
this.
named him Peace, too.
See, because Japan also suffered through war. I think I know how Mr. Miller's mother felt.
I think I definitely listened to some of these in the last episode, and then at the end, and then didn't save. So now it's just coming up again. I'm like, did I actually even listen to these?
You like the peace sign, huh?
See, as a gesture, it connects every peace-loving person. Here, you try it, Snake. Peace.
No thanks. It doesn't suit me.
Too bad for you.
You know, the V in the peace sign comes from...
Yeah, we listened to that as well. We listened to that.
So, you live alone now?
No, not alone. I've been living in school dormitories since I started junior high. After my mother died, my relatives took me in, but they were not my real family.
You didn't fit in there.
In a way. My aunts were kind to me and all. But I know how difficult it must have been to suddenly have a child thrust into their lives. When you live with someone, there are no secrets.
We also listened to this one as well. There you go. And I think this stuff is the new stuff that has come up since the other missions that we've done.
Playa del Alba means Beach of Dawn. The morning sun is so beautiful over the Caribbean.
Beach of Dawn, huh? Perfect place to start a mission.
The clear blue water, the white sand, the swaying palm trees. You cannot get more South American than here. It is paradise on earth.
Yeah, guess I should have packed my Hawaiian shirt.
The coral reefs and mangrove forests protect the small fish in the area. Sea turtles come to lay their eggs on these beaches. We are not the only ones who enjoy this place. It is heaven for more than just humans.
Where's the Hawaiian shirt camouflage? Also, like, goddamn, like, the amount of recorded dialogue, just the sheer amount of recorded dialogue, again, like, has always been massive in Metal Gear Solid, but, like, you're just really feeling it when it's like, man, they really just wanted to cover all the bases, didn't they?
Bosque del Alba means Forest of Dawn. Naturally, it is situated on the east coast. It is your standard tropical rainforest. Everything you would imagine in a jungle.
No sign of morning sun here.
The foliage is too thick for direct sunlight to hit the floor. I do not know how easy it will be making your way through here.
I'll be fine. This isn't my first trip to a jungle.
Snake Eater.
The mercenary supply base is situated on elevated ground by the coast. I heard them call it Puerto del Alba, Port of Dawn. They have perfect visibility of the area from up there. We did our best to sneak in undetected, but one of the guards spotted us and we...
What is it?
I'm sorry. You'll have to ask Professor Galvez the rest.
It's okay. You've been through a lot.
I am sorry. I just cannot.
You did great, Paz. I won't let your efforts go wasted.
I'll have to ask Galvez about that one then.
This is a tropical rainforest, just like Bosque del Alba. The temperature and humidity can be brutal. El Senegal means place of mud.
No. Mud. Great. I'll watch my step.
This area often gets flooded by the river. There are canals here and there carved out by water.
Good places to hide.
But they will also make it harder for you to see. Be careful, Snake. There should be a suspension bridge around there.
In lowlands like this?
The ground nearby is harder and higher than usual. The river cut through it, eventually creating a valley. There might be another way to get across the river somewhere.
I wouldn't want to run into someone on the bridge.
The valley tends to be misty, so you might not be able to see the water from up there. Fall and it will leave more than a bump.
I'll be careful.
Wonderful. And then the swamp.
When a river floods an area, the banks can collapse, creating a marsh. You see a lot of them around here.
I'll need to watch the noise my feet make in El Senegal.
There is a marsh on the other side of the river, too. The suspension bridge will take you there.
Rio del Jade.
The river running through here is Rio del Jade, or the Jade River.
Jade? Are there minerals around here?
No, it refers to the color of the water. You will have to go to Guatemala for jade.
Doesn't look all that pretty from where I'm standing.
We are still in the rainy season, so the river is a little muddy. It will return to normal once the dry season starts. Rivers are an important means of transport around here. They are relatively calm, and there are plenty of canals along the coast too.
A boat would be more than enough to transport some good-sized cargo.
Like a nuclear weapon.
We don't know enough yet. I'll keep looking.
Thank you, Snake.
Some of these that Paz is telling us is like, it really does... it's interesting that they're briefing files before the mission, but the way that some of these are being spoken and like told to us is like as if we're currently on the mission. Like there should be a suspension bridge around there. Like this is this place, and like Snake talks as if he's actually there. So it's very interesting to have this information that you take on before the mission instead of being able to open up a codec and get this information when it's like more relevant when you're in the moment, sort of thing. It's an interesting way to do it. I feel like I'd kind of prefer the classic codec that we know and love instead of briefing files, because then we are in a situation like this where I'm sitting here and going, okay, I'll listen to absolutely everything out of context and see how we go.
Panama Disease was rampant here about 20 years ago, putting a lot of banana plantations out of business.
Panama Disease?
It is caused by a type of fungus. Apparently it killed off almost all the banana species that used to grow here.
How could that happen?
Cultivated bananas do not produce seeds. You have to remove and transplant part of the stem yourself. You plant them in the fields.
So you've got acres of identical plants?
See, when one plant is infected, the disease spreads quickly. Species lacking genetic diversity become weak. They grow different bananas today, one said to be resistant to Panama disease.
Okay, Mount Arazu area. Mount Arazu area seems like this might be kind of the stuff that we're getting into at the moment, I think, because... Hang on.
As I said before,
El Cadalso? Because that's about this mission. Ah, it's that one there. Okay, there you go. Well, let's listen to these.
Costa Rica has several active volcanoes, Irasu being one of them.
That's where Camino de Lava comes from, huh?
The tropical dry forests around here are quite different from our rainforests. They lose their leaves in the dry season. Tropical forests are not all thick jungles. A few of them even have cacti. Some of Costa Rica's greatest assets are its diverse forests and natural landscapes. Costa Rica got its first real railroads up and running about 100 years ago. Their primary purpose was to move coffee harvested in the Central Basin to the Caribbean coast.
They built railroads here 100 years ago? That's impressive.
It was even more difficult than you would imagine. Later, they started using the railroads for shipping bananas too. There still might be some branch lines around here. Aldea de los Despiertos means Village of the Awake.
Weird name.
The area is littered with coffee fields, and there is a factory nearby. The villagers are fans of coffee, so...
Nah, they don't get much sleep, huh? They've got a sense of humor, all right.
I cannot believe they would take over a place like this and use it as a prison. It is unforgivable for both the CIA and the thugs they employ. All the villagers wanted was to live in peace. What gives the CIA the right to crush them like that?
They don't care about anyone's rights but their own. It's just the way some people are.
You really think so?
Don't worry. It just gives me the right to teach them a lesson.
It's interesting that Paz doesn't say La CIA, but she refers to it as the CIA and says La CIA instead.
La CIA has taken control of this coffee factory too, all to produce its drugs. It was famous once for its fine beans.
For its fine beans.
Capital Aroma Encantado.
We love the beans.
Enchanting aroma, huh?
See, once we have thrown the mercenaries out of Costa Rica, I know it will make wonderful coffee again. And then you must come and try some, Snake.
Sounds great. I wouldn't mind a cup of joe after all this is over. Oh, wait.
What is wrong?
No, I just
Yes!
this guy knew
Yes!
was big on coffee.
Zero.
Get rid of that
Tea.
muddy water and get a cup of black tea down your gob, he'd say.
That is too bad for him. It is delicious.
As soon as he said cup of joe, I was like, I wonder if he's going to reference Zero's love for tea and that Zero, like, smack talked, like, when he, like, brought it up. That's really nice. I love that.
As I said before, building railroads in Costa Rica was a dangerous job. A lot of men died, and sometimes they stopped work altogether. This is one of those places. They had to cut through steep terrain, so when they finally made it through, they just built the rail terminal right there, and that is why they named it
El Cadalso. The gallows. Charming. I'm surprised the construction money didn't dry up the way things were going.
Actually, it did, but the bananas helped complete it, so they say.
You mean the energy the workers got from eating bananas? Oh, I suppose they do have plenty of vitamins and...
Potassium.
No. I meant the money they got to finish it came from exporting bananas.
Oh.
But one thing is for certain. The owners of the railroads expanded into the banana trade after construction was completed. That was the start of banana cultivation in Costa Rica.
Alright. That's Paz's library done. Now we can get into Amanda, who gives us the history of Nicaragua, FSLN, enemy strength, relations with the US, and about herself. Chico will also give us geographical info, the legend of Isla del Monstruo, information about himself as well. I'm just trying to check what's relevant to the mission. So let's just destroy the tank, supply staging point. Wonderful. Alright, we are now going to get into Amanda, and then Chico. Big little catch up on briefing codec episode, that's for sure.
Since it was founded, my country has not once been able to choose its own path. First Spain, then America. Over 100 years of this.
I know.
In the 19th century, an American mercenary named William Walker seized power in Nicaragua.
I'd heard he exploited rivalries between the political parties.
Even after we expelled him, the Americans sent in their Marines under the pretext of quelling political unrest.
And the real reason?
To intimidate the government. and thwart the construction of the Nicaragua Canal.
I thought the U.S. already has the rights to build a canal in Nicaragua.
They never intended to build a canal there. They'd already started digging in Panama. A canal in Nicaragua would break up the Panama Canal's monopoly. Reason enough for America to stick its nose into our affairs.
They snagged the rights so nobody else could build there.
It was General Sandino who finally stood up to los Yankees. General Sandino waged a guerrilla war against the Marines, at last driving them out. He was a true hero, and to us Sandinistas, like a father. But when they pulled out, the Americans left us something to remember them by.
The National Guard.
Yes, La Guardia. In name, a peacekeeping force, but in reality, Commander Somoza's personal army, answering to no one else. Unable to stay silent, General Sandino went to protest and was assassinated by Somoza as he made his way home. It was then that Somoza and Los Sapos began to eat our country alive from the inside. It has been 40 years since the Somoza family became the rulers of Nicaragua. With La Guardia at their command, no one can challenge them.
You came here on the run from the National Guard, right?
See, they took everything. Our land, our homes, our jobs.
Now belong to Somoza.
See, the law too. He's even got the judges in his pocket. You defy him, you face death. Everyone bows and scrapes before La Guardia. Even then you might get a beating if they are in a bad mood.
And you're trying to change things.
That's not all. These Somozas have used their power to line their pockets. They confiscate people's land and hand it to members of the Somoza family. By now, close to half the farmland in Nicaragua is theirs. We were powerless until... You remember the earthquake 2 years ago?
Yeah, I heard the capital was hit pretty hard.
We lost Managua, our capital city. People sent aid from all around the world. Tears of sorrow turned to tears of joy. Yet almost all of it was embezzled by the Somozas. They sold out those who'd lost everything for money. They feasted on our country's suffering. Public resentment is at the boiling point. The Somozas' days are numbered. We will see to it.
Good stuff, Amanda.
The first Somoza was originally no more than the commander of La Guardia. Ordinarily, a man of his station could never hope to become president. But the president at the time had no power to back him. The only one with the strength to oppose him was General Sandino. No, better to say the general was the only one who dared oppose him. There was nothing special about him. Above all, it takes a strong will to see justice done. That is what he taught us.
It's also what motivated Somoza to have him killed.
Yes, the rest was easy. He got rid of the president, taking office in a sham election. And once he had the power, he never gave it up.
Talk about heavy-handed.
He had the Americans backing him, that's why. They didn't want to hand over power to a rebellious general.
Even so, it's hard to believe Washington would give its blessing to a guy like that.
The American president at the time put it this way. Somoza may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. In other words,
Son of a
better a
bitch.
dog or Los Sapos than an anti-US regime. The Managua Earthquake struck 2 years ago, the day before Christmas Eve. Giant cracks opened up in the streets. Sleeping children were crushed in collapsing houses. No chance to escape. No visit from Santa Claus. Thanks to Somoza, the old houses could not even get rebuilt. It was a nightmare.
I heard the epicenter was right in the middle of the city.
Even today, it's too dangerous to build on top of the fault line. The city center is still in ruins.
And to make things worse, Somoza stole the recovery money.
We must not fail. We owe it to those who lost their lives. We will defeat Somoza. We are Sandinistas, the heirs of General Sandino's will.
Sandino. The father of modern guerrilla warfare.
To you, maybe. To us, he's more like a real father.
That why you named yourselves after him?
Of course. La Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional. The Sandinista National Liberation Front is named in his honor. We share the general's goal, to take back our country's freedom. In his day, from America. In ours, from the despot Somoza.
Times have changed, but the song remains the same.
Patria libre o morir. That is our slogan. El Che used to say the same thing, you know.
Patria o muerte. The slogan of the Cuban Revolution. So, you're fighting for a socialist revolution too, then?
No, it's not about ideology. We only want to live normal lives. We are sick of living in a country where you can be beaten for walking down the street, where you never know if your neighbor is snitching on you. Our goal is to give back the country to its people.
Yeah, the Cuban Revolution started out like that too.
We are few in number, but we will win. Victoria o muerte. For a revolutionary, there is no other fate. Augusto Cesar Sandino, general and hero of Nicaragua. 50 years ago, conflict broke out between the political parties of Nicaragua. The U.S. Marines intervened in the name of restoring order. The only one who refused to listen to their call for reconciliation was General Sandino.
Huh. One man against the Marines. That takes guts.
The general wasn't a professional soldier. Neither were his compadres. And they certainly could not match the Marines' equipment. But he used the land to his advantage, lurking in the fields and hills of Nicaragua, and using surprise attacks to harass the Marines.
I know. I've read plenty of textbooks on guerrilla warfare.
In the end, he drove them out. He was truly a role model for us.
Yeah, but that was the 30s. Didn't the Depression have something to do with it? It takes cash to wage war.
Perhaps. But there is no denying what the general accomplished. The people hailed him as the General de Hombres Libres, the General of Free Men. They loved him. And then he was assassinated by Anastasio Somoza Garcia, commander of La Guardia.
The father of the current Somoza.
Somoza had the Americans' backing. That is the way things were. The general may be dead, and the times may have changed, but his will lives on inside each of us. We are the sons and daughters of General Sandino.
Hey, how's the watermelon business these days?
Not bad. I hear the compas back home are hanging in there too.
Good to hear.
You know our nickname. I'm impressed. No wonder they call you boss.
You used to hide your weapons in hollowed-out watermelons, smuggle them right past the National Guard. You even transported pineapple grenades that way. The name caught on among sympathizers in the region and...
What are you talking about? They call us watermelon sellers because the general's name sounds like the word for watermelon. Sandia.
Really?
Si.
Damn it, Kaz.
Damn it, Cars. He gave him fake facts. That's so funny.
A revolution to bring peace to your country, huh? No matter how much we fight, peace never gets any closer, does it?
I do not like it, but it is the only way. If we do not fight back, they'll just keep exploiting us. You want proof? Look at our country's history. Revolution is a means, and not an end. I know. When the revolution is victorious, I want my country to be at peace. But to bring peace, we have to first eliminate that traitorous scum.
It's an old saying. We make war that we may live in peace.
Who said it?
Aristotle.
You know your history.
I had a good teacher.
It has always been like this.
The boss.
People making the same mistakes over and over. And still, all we can do is fight.
I hear you. If you've got a goal, you've got to keep moving forward. I noticed you called Che Guevara El Che.
Not just us. Everyone in these parts does. Che was always his nickname. It does not feel right to call him by his last name. I was shocked the first time I saw you. You look so much like him.
I look like El Che, huh?
Sort of. Not in the face. It's more the way you carry yourself.
I guess Che's a hero to the Sandinistas, too.
Of course. The FSLN was formed in the spirit of the ideologies championed by El Che and Fidel.
Fidel Castro. So, you're trying to bring the Cuban Revolution to Nicaragua.
Well, we were. But Cuba isn't what it once was. Not since El Che left. El Che was a true revolutionary. He fought and died for the people. He worked harder than anybody, and he was a righteous man. Even as a minister of Cuba, he gave up his weekends to work on the farms and public works. As a volunteer, no less.
Yeah, I've heard the stories. But when you think about it, wasn't it that obsession that did him in?
How do you mean?
We can't all be supermen. He thought the ideals he applied in Cuba would work in Bolivia, but he failed to win converts and the support of the peasants, and it cost him his life.
Maybe you are right. But at least he did not steal from those peasants, no matter how hard things got.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that. There's plenty of guerrillas out there who'd rob their own people to feed their revolutions.
If we had a comandante like him, the Sandinistas would find the will to fight.
You called that giant chopper an hombre nuevo.
Si. It means new man.
New man?
There was nobody piloting that thing.
Oh.
It must be controlled by machine.
Yeah, it seems that way. No human being could pull off those crazy maneuvers.
But it's not crazy. It's smart. It sings, too.
When we first saw it, one of your men said, "Pilot must be an hombre nuevo."
Me? I do not like the name.
Why?
Hombre nuevo was what El Che was striving to become. What all of us who joined the Sandinistas strive to become. That's why. An hombre nuevo is one who finds joy in virtue and voluntary labor. It makes me furious to see that name given to such a monster.
I'll bet.
That's fair enough.
Chico called that helicopter El Colibri.
Our name for the hummingbird. You saw how that chopper moved, how it hovered in midair like a hummingbird?
A hell of a lot bigger than a bird, though.
True, but better than hombre nuevo, don't you think? When you get kidnapped by El Colibri, it's all over. They take you to a prison camp and torture you until you snitch on your compas.
That's what took Chico.
They have no mercy. Once you talk, they toss you out like trash. I knew this, and still I could not save Chico. If he cannot be saved, I will do what must be done.
Don't write him off like that. Sometimes you have to survive, even if it means sacrificing your honor. I'll get him back. I promise.
And we did. We did get him back. Good stuff.
The land in our country belongs to us, and yet it does not belong to us.
How so?
Along the coast, it is all banana groves, and in the mountains, it is coffee. I guess in that way, it is not so different from here.
Plantations.
Almost all the bananas and coffee are sold as exports. The landlords keep the money for themselves, leaving precious little to the farmers. Worse, the biggest landowners in the country are Somoza and his family.
But it does bring in foreign currency.
I doubt even that, at least for bananas. The plantations are owned by American corporations. The bananas are processed in factories on the plantations and exported to America from private ports. It's like having little American enclaves along the coast of Nicaragua.
But the farmers have no choice but to go work there.
Es ridículo. The people have to take their land back. It is one of the things we are fighting for.
Tell me, when exactly did you realize your dad was working with the KGB?
About 6 months ago. Up until then, we only had beans to eat. And then suddenly
Beans?
we started to get eggs and flour. Our bullet shortage simply disappeared.
How'd he get the cocaine?
Ask the KGB. All we did here was process it. Coca plants grow here too. But to my knowledge, almost all of the stuff we used came from Colombia and Bolivia.
It's processed in a factory and then shipped to ports on the Caribbean Sea. Where does it go after that?
I never thought about it. I mean, I did not want to think about it.
The biggest cocaine consumer in the world is the United States. I'm guessing they smuggle it in on vessels disguised as fishing boats.
Wait. La CIA uses that route too. Are you telling me they're selling cocaine to their own country?
Looks that way.
Those bastards are turning their own children into junkies? Are they insane?
No. Just afraid. Afraid of a communist Central America.
About herself.
Amanda, when did you join up with the Sandinistas?
About a year ago, when I went into the mountains with mi viejo and his group.
I thought your dad was with the FSLN from the start.
No. He fought alongside General Sandino, but after that, he retired for a while. He found a job, got a wife and a house, and raised us kids. Then one day, some Sandinista students came by.
And he felt the old fire in his belly.
Something like that. All he did was help them escape from La Guardia, though. But then La Guardia showed up. They broke into our house and began pushing him around, shouting questions.
I'm guessing he kept his mouth shut.
No matter how hard they hit him. Our house was trashed. After that, he was on their list. They harassed him day and night. It was only then that he gave himself over to the Sandinistas. He kept it hidden from us at first, so we would not get hurt.
He sounds like a good father.
He was. But my mother got fed up with it. She left us. I don't blame her.
Why didn't you go with her?
It was a hard decision for sure. But like my father, I could not let Somoza get away with his crimes. But most of all,
Chico.
he is too much like his papa. One way or the other, he was going to stay. And I could not leave him behind. Soon enough, La Guardia drove us out, and we found ourselves in the mountains. It just kind of happened.
Well, for an accidental revolutionary, you sure put up a hell of a fight.
The mountains make men into warriors. The training is harsh, but it brings us that much closer to being hombres nuevos.
Chico couldn't ask for a better sister. I can see why they picked you to be Commandante.
She's tough, that's why.
When I was little, I came down with malaria. Unlucky for me, it was the bad kind. I was in a daze the whole time. And at one point they said I was not going to make it.
Malarial encephalopathy. I hear it's pretty common in tropical malaria cases.
Even today, my memory sometimes gets a little fuzzy. Since then, I've had this fear of mosquitoes. When I hear them buzzing nearby, I get jumpy.
Aha, that explains the chain smoking.
See, I thought it might help keep the mosquitoes away, just a little. Maybe it is all in my head. You're the same way, right?
Well, I will say this. I prefer a cigar over mosquitoes.
Me too.
I've got to hand it to you. Takes guts to conquer your fear like that and live a gorilla's life in the wild.
It is nothing. El Che did not let asthma stop him from leading the revolution. Compared to him, I am no hero.
And this is where Snake can go, yeah, I am friends with this guy called Campbell. He got malaria once, and we had to talk to my good old buddy paramedic and get some drugs to fix him up. But no references to the malaria that Snake has experienced.
I'm sorry to hear about your dad.
Thank you for saying that. Mi viejo was the leader of the Frente. He was the last of the generation that knew General Sandino. He saw the general's exploits firsthand as a boy. He would tell us stories about it all the time and about how the general was assassinated.
Did you know he was getting money from the KGB?
I had some idea, but I did not have the courage to confront him about it. I know it was a painful decision for him to make.
I can imagine.
Yes, my father was a good man. I loved him as a daughter, and his soldiers believed in him. Thanks to him, La Frente held together even in the worst of times. I don't know if I can ever fill his shoes.
Chico.
Chico's 12, right?
Right.
Isn't he a little Short for his age.
Malnourishment. Food is hard to come by when you're running around in the jungle.
He's got quite an appetite.
I know. I didn't want him to come in the first place, but there was no one to take him in. I had no choice but to look after him.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Sometimes it's better for a kid to be with his family than far away in a safe place.
Thank you.
Promise me this, though. When your fight is over, make sure he gets a proper education. Give him a chance to be something other than a gorilla. It's not too late to teach him something other than fighting.
Okay, I promise. You know what book Chico really likes? The World Encyclopedia of Mysterious Creatures. The Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti.
UMAs. Yeah, I know.
He's still so much like a boy. I worry about him.
He'll be fine. I know plenty of grown men who still go crazy over UMAs.
Are you serious?
Alright, that's Amanda done. On to Chico. Geographical info. I think we already listened to this.
Supply staging point is at the eastern foot of Irasu.
Alright, we watched this one, because that's where he says, Metal Gear. The legend of Isla del Monstruo. Let's have a listen.
Snake, legend has it, a place called Isla del Monstruo is near Costa Rica.
Isla del Monstruo.
It was discovered in the 18th century by Caribbean pirates sailing over to the Pacific. And the island in Treasure Island is based on one near Costa Rica, too.
Treasure Island. I remember reading that.
You've read it, too? That makes things easier. In Nicaragua, we too have a story about a group of pirates that encountered a flying monster out at sea. Some even say they landed on this monster island, though we still don't know exactly where it is. That's the reason I've always wanted to come to Costa Rica.
I see.
Ooh, I heard another story about a talking cat that lives somewhere in Costa Rica. They say it'll take you to this place.
Interesting stuff.
Want to know more about the island?
Maybe later. If I'm headed that way, you can fill me in.
Okay, just let me know.
Love it. About himself. Alright, let's have a look at this stuff.
Amanda's so bossy. It's always follow me or stay here. The other day she told me, chew your gallo pinto before you swallow. Can you believe it?
Knowing your sister? Yeah, I can.
The enemy could strike at any time. I can't sit around taking my sweet time eating. I'm a Sandinista, just like the others. I don't need some woman telling me what to do.
Some woman? She's your sister, and she's doing the best she can to fill your father's shoes.
I know, but
You tell him, Snake.
lately she hasn't been doing so good. I should be strong for her.
Now you're talking. Sorry to hear about your dad.
Don't be. He is a guerrilla warrior. We pledge our lives to our country and its people. I'm ready to die too if I have to.
You sure?
You better believe it. Like mi viejo used to say. Patria o muerte.
Che said it first.
My dad used to tell us all kinds of stories. About General Sandino and his fight against La Guardia. About my mom before she left us.
You didn't want to go with her.
It's not like that. La Revolucion comes first, that's all.
You must wish you could see her, though.
I don't know. But I know I'll see her again when this is all over. Somehow, I just know it. When I do, me and my mom and papa are all going to live together again. At least that's what I thought. Now,
Hang in there, Chico. Your sister needs you.
okay.
Poor little Chico.
Have you ever heard, shoot, coward? You're only going to kill a man.
Che's last words. He'd been captured in Bolivia and said it to the soldiers just as they were about to execute him.
El Che. He was something, wasn't he? Coming up with a line like that knowing he was about to die.
After the Cuban Revolution, Che gave up his position in the new government to aid in revolutions in other countries. He knew he could die at any time, and he was ready for it.
Me? I couldn't even take a little torture.
But you've been reborn as an hombre nuevo. Right, Chico?
Right.
Don't you ever get lonely, living away from your mom?
Not really. My compas are my family now. A lot of them are from the same village as me.
So you had plenty of people to take care of you.
Take care of me? I'm a warrior, like any other Sandinista. We look out for each other. That is how it works.
Sorry. Guess I misspoke.
Now we're scattered because of that colibri. Wonder where everybody went. Hey, Snake. If you see any Frente prisoners, please, you gotta get them out, okay? Those guys are solid, every one. You could use them in MSF.
They could be my solid snakes.
Hey, Snake, are there any jobs for me here at Mother Base? I can do anything.
You don't have to work, you know.
Don't treat me like a kid. I'm a man now.
Okay, then. What are you good at?
Let me think. Everything. Put me on any team. I can pull my own weight.
Well, you are young. You'll probably be a fast learner. I'll think of something.
Anything you need, boss. You'll see. I can fight as good as anybody.
Anything you need. Okay, everybody. Everybody who has made it this far to the end is catching up on briefing files. That was the history lesson with Kojima. Everything that we wanted to know that we haven't yet touched on from our four lovely friends here has been listened to. Thank you so much for sitting here and watching along with me. This is specifically for those of you that want this extra information and want me to sit here. A lot of it is just sort of information absorption. I'm not really able to really comment on any of it, but like some of it's entertaining, some of it's informative. It's a lot of information that helps fueling everything going forward. So this is a companion piece to the episode that has just been uploaded, to completely optional for those of you that want to see the briefing files on camera. Now this was a bigger episode because I needed to play catch up. Going forward, we'll see how we go, whether I just, get more into listening to every single briefing file before a main mission instead, and just including it in there so it doesn't bank up like this. But this is just to clear that out of the way so we start on a fresh slate for next episode, where we will start listening to all of the briefing files and have that on camera for you. So guys, thank you so much for watching this bonus episode going through the file library, and I will see you in the next episode of Peace Walker. Thank you.